According to the occupational injury data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, dozens of workers die every year from heat exposure. Thousands more report sickness due to working in hot or humid environments. Heat hazards are present across many industries, although most prevalent in the transportation, manufacturing, protective services, installation repair, construction, and maintenance industries. Risk of exposure to high heat temperatures can be identified in practically all occupations. In this training, you will identify common risk factors of environmental heat and bodily overheating, learn the main dangers of heat exposure, and we'll explore safe work practices. Staying safe during hot, humid, or physically demanding tasks first involves recognizing potential hazards, unique physiological considerations, and workplace conditions. Have you ever heard the story of the frog and the pot of water? Well, it goes something like this. A frog finds its way into a pot of water atop a stove. Now, the stove is off, so the water feels fine. But then, the temperature of the stove top is increased so gradually that the frog doesn't know to jump out and save itself before it's too late. Well, this analogy for lack of situational awareness plays very seriously into high temperature exposure risk. Heat stress and related hazards often go unrecognized or frequently enough are simply ignored and shrugged off. Your body is very good at regulating core temperature. However, it has limits. Work that involves high air temperatures, humid conditions, exposure to radiation, involve proximity or contact with heated materials, or tasks that are particularly strenuous, all increase an employee's risk of heat stress. Now, to complicate things, risk of heat stress also depends on the individual employee's physical or medical condition. Now, these factors are more difficult or even impossible to address, such as body weight and physical fitness, heart disease, age, prescribed medications, and prior history of heat injury. Now, other factors are more easily controlled, like alcohol or drug use, hydration, whether workers have acclimated to the hot or humid conditions, type of personal protective equipment being used, and choice of clothing. Now, there is a difference between short-term exposure to hot work, such as while welding in an open area, or contact with high-temperature materials and equipment, versus working in hot conditions like those experienced in confined spaces, outdoor work, or locations with indoor heat-generating appliances, warehouses, roofs, roadways, commercial kitchens, and factories. These are all common sites for heat stress danger. Now, whether a hot condition involves short-term exposure, is a surprise condition, such as air conditioning equipment failure, or is a normal part of everyday work for you or your employees, you must be ready for these hazards prior to work starting. As for the consequences of ignoring heat exposure risk, these are well known, ranging from illness to increased risk of accidents to death. Heat exposure dangers can happen anywhere and at any time of year. Now, the majority of deaths and illnesses occur in the construction, agriculture, landscaping, transportation, and fossil fuel occupations. Heat stroke is the most dangerous heat-related illness. A person experiencing heat stroke will exhibit signs of confusion or disorientation. Now, as with a typical stroke, slurred speech and seizures are common symptoms. Now, since the body has reached a point where it can no longer self-regulate, body temperature rises dramatically. The skin often becomes hot and dry, and the victim may even lose consciousness. Now, somewhat less dangerous, but still very serious, and with the potential to become heat stress, is heat exhaustion. Now, here, the body has lost a great deal of water and salt. The victim sweats profusely, urinates smaller volumes, may become irritable, and generally experiences strong thirst, headaches, nausea, dizziness, and weakness. Other possible illnesses from heat stress include rhabdomyolysis, where muscles break down due to excessive physical activity, heat syncope, which is fainting or dizziness from prolonged standing or suddenly standing up after sitting or lying down, heat cramps, literally painful cramps due to heavy sweating or heat exhaustion, and also heat rash and heat fatigue. Along with other more sudden traumas like the potential for contact with hot materials, combustion gases, arc flash, and the like, each danger is predictable. Now, this means precautions can be taken to help avoid heat hazards, and first aid treatments exist to help minimize harm before professional help arrives. It is the responsibility of employers to train their workers on job hazards. In most cases, proper personal protective equipment is also to be provided by the employer. When selecting and replacing PPE, consider how the materials and types of personal protective equipment may contribute to heat stress. Wearing a face mask or respirator, for example, may be a heat-related risk factor. Alongside the task identified with a job hazard analysis, requirements should be in place to monitor temperature and relative humidity and to conduct frequent check-ins with employees on their status. Now, prevention of heat stress includes making time for breaks in cool or shady areas, ensuring proper air movement, encouraging proper attire and frequent and appropriate hydration, supporting a culture of safe hot work, and allowing workers to build up a heat tolerance. Now, be very watchful during the first few days when working in warm or hot environments in order to give yourself or your employees time for acclimatization. Shorter shifts, decreased workloads, and alternative time schedules are appropriate during this acclimatization period. Be sure to train new employees on prevention and how to identify the signs of heat stress before they begin working. All personnel should be ready to call 911 immediately. First aid may include burn care. In the event of illnesses like heat stroke or exhaustion, the victim must be cooled right away. Now, preferably, this should be done with water or ice. If these are not available, and if it is safe to do so, help the victim into an air-conditioned or at least shaded area. Do not leave the worker until help arrives. Now, these procedures should all be part of your workplace's heat illness prevention program and emergency plan. A heat illness prevention program should be developed that outlines responsibilities and oversight of safe work, including methods of building worker heat tolerance, monitoring temperature and humidity, heat stress symptoms, and other heat-related hazards, ensuring proper training has been completed, and applying the preventive and emergency actions we have discussed. To assist, OSHA provides a heat safety tool that helps determine levels of risk based on work conditions. Additionally, small and medium-sized businesses can take advantage of OSHA's on-site consultation program without fear of incurring penalties. Now, the CDC publishes detailed recommendations on amount, frequency, and even temperature of hydrating fluids, the amount of time required for acclimating workers to hot work conditions, and further heat stress control strategies. After taking this training, have you recognized heat stress risk for yourself or someone else? Do not hesitate to raise concerns and report unsafe conditions. You have a part to play in promoting a culture of safety at your workplace. It is an employer's responsibility to keep workplaces free of known health and safety hazards. Everyone has the right to speak up about safety concerns without fear of retaliation, to receive training in a language they understand, request safety inspections, have access to resources to help keep them safe, and report work-related injuries, illnesses, and unsafe conditions. Now, too often, concerns about heat stress are dismissed as signs of weakness. This can prove fatal. Know your rights and follow safe work practices. A knowledge of hazards is not a replacement for active monitoring and safety enforcement.